On a faraway planet under twin suns, an ancient sword stood trapped in stone. It had been there for thousands of years, glowing faintly with a strange silver light. The aliens called it the Blade of Eternity, a weapon forged by forgotten hands. Every alien empire that ruled this world had tried to claim it. Kings, generals, and champions pulled at the hilt with all their strength. Some prayed to their gods before touching it. Others used machines and science, but no matter how powerful they were, the sword refused to move. It stayed cold and heavy, rejecting every alien hand that tried to lift it. Legends spread across the stars that the sword would only answer to the worthy. The aliens believed worthiness meant strength, conquest, and power. Generations of warriors had bled and failed, leaving behind broken pride. The sword became a symbol of shame for them, a constant reminder that no alien was truly chosen. One day a human ship crashed on the same planet. It was a small explorer craft, damaged by meteor storms. Among the survivors was a man named Daniel Hayes. He was no soldier, no emperor, no chosen one. He was an explorer, curious, quiet, and sometimes stubborn. When the aliens found him, they mocked his weak human body. To them, humans were still a primitive race compared to their shining fleets. But whispers of the sword reached his ears, and his heart stirred with curiosity. The alien city that guarded the sword was carved from black stone and glowing crystals. The pedestal of the blade stood in the heart of the city square. Thousands of aliens gathered there every cycle, daring warriors to try their luck. It had become a ritual, a performance to entertain the crowd. When Daniel first walked through the square, he felt the sword calling to him. The glow became brighter when his eyes met the hilt. The aliens laughed, saying, "Even our strongest could not lay. Baft it. What chance does a fragile human have?" Daniel said nothing, but deep inside he felt a strange pull. It was not a challenge of power, but a whisper of destiny. That evening, the alien warlord Zorthak declared another trial. Dozens of alien fighters stepped forward to try the sword. One by one, they placed their hands on the hilt, straining until their arms shook. Some collapsed from exhaustion. Others roared in anger. The sword did not move, not even a hair. The crowd cheered at their failure, amused by their desperation. Then Zorthak's eyes turned to the human. "Let the outsider try so he may learn shame as we did," he sneered. The crowd laughed and pointed, chanting for the human to step forward. Daniel's crew begged him not to do it. They feared the aliens would kill him if he dared. But Daniel felt something deep inside, a voice that was not his own. It whispered, "Come to me." He took a slow breath and walked to the pedestal. The laughter of the aliens echoed around him like thunder. But the moment he touched the sword, silence fell. The silver blade glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Gasps filled the air. Aliens froze in shock. For centuries the sword had never reacted, but now it shimmered in the hands of a human. Daniel tried to pull, but the blade did not move yet. Instead, he felt a rush of visions explode in his mind. He saw burning worlds, endless wars, armies clashing in the stars. He saw the fall of great empires and the cries of forgotten people. He felt the weight of destiny, heavy and terrifying. The sword was not testing his muscles, it was testing his soul. The aliens watched, some trembling, some furious. Zorthak's face twisted with rage, for he understood what this meant. The sword had never glowed for them, not once. But now, in front of all their eyes, it answered to a human. Daniel's knees shook as the vision ended. He pulled at his hand away, gasping for air. The glow faded slightly but did not vanish. The sword had not yet chosen, but it had not rejected him either. Whispers spread like fire through the alien crowd. Whispers spread like fire through the alien crowd. Some cried that it was a trick. Others whispered about prophecy. Could it be that the ancient weapon was never meant for aliens at all? Could it be that it had been waiting across the ages for humanity? Daniel stood there, uncertain but unafraid. He did not know what would happen next, but one truth had already shaken the galaxy. The sword had spoken, and it had spoken to him. The alien crowd was restless, their voices rising like a storm. Some shouted that the sword was cursed, others screamed that the human was a fraud. But deep down, every alien there had seen the truth. The blade of eternity had glowed for the human and no one else. Zorthak, the warlord, stood tall in his black armor, his eyes burning with fury. He had spent years trying to claim the weapon. He had sacrificed soldiers, spent treasure, and spilled blood. Yet the sword never gave him even a spark of light. Now this fragile human had touched it once and awakened it. It was an insult he could not accept. Daniel felt the eyes of thousands piercing into him. He wanted to walk away, to forget the sword and its strange visions, but something inside him whispered again, "You cannot leave. Your path is tied to me." He clenched his fists, trying to calm the trembling in his chest. He was no hero, no chosen champion, but the sword had called to him, and he knew destiny was not something a man could run from. The aliens surrounded the pedestal, forming a circle of judgment. Their voices turned into a chant. "Prove your worth. Prove your worth." Zorthak raised his massive hand and silence fell at once. His voice thundered through the square. "If the sword calls to him, then let the test begin. We will see if this human is worthy or if the sword is only mocking us." Daniel's crew tried to step forward, but alien guards held them back. He was alone now, a sin. Human in the center of a hostile crowd, Zorthak pointed his spear at Daniel. "You will not just touch the blade, you will face the trials of fire." The crowd roared in approval. The trials of fire were legendary. No alien had ever survived them fully. They were said to be a test given by the ancient builders of the sword, a trial of strength, courage, and spirit. If Daniel failed, he would die. If he succeeded, the sword would truly awaken. Daniel swallowed hard, his mouth dry, but he nodded, knowing that this path was now his to walk. The aliens led him through winding tunnels beneath the city. The air grew hotter, the walls glowing faint red as if fire burned deep below. At the end of the passage was a vast chamber of stone. Torches lit the walls, casting shadows like ghosts. In the center stood 3 gates, each carved with alien symbols. One gate showed fire, another showed beasts. The third showed stars. The alien priest hissed in a low voice. "The sword will guide you, human. Only one path is meant for you." Daniel stepped forward, his heart beating like thunder. As he stared at the gates, the hilt of the distant sword glowed faintly in his mind. He could feel its pulse calling him toward the gate marked with stars. The aliens muttered in shock. That gate had been untouched for centuries, sealed by stone. Yet as Daniel reached out, the ancient gate trembled and opened, the air filled with cold wind as if the void of space had entered the chamber. He stepped inside, and the gate sealed behind him with a crash. Darkness swallowed him, broken only by faint blue lights in the ceiling. The ground shifted under his feet, becoming glassy and transparent. Through it, he could see endless galaxies swirling below. It felt as if he was walking on the skin of the universe itself. Then came the first trial. Shapes rose from the floor, shadows made of light and darkness. As they took the forms of warriors, both alien and human, each carried a weapon of flame or steel, their eyes burning with hatred. The voices of the dead echoed. "You are not worthy, human. You are weak. You are nothing." Daniel raised his hands in defense, though he had no weapon. Fear clawed at him, but he stood his ground. The shadows rushed him, striking with blades of fire. He stumbled, rolled, and barely dodged. But with each strike he realized they were not testing his body, they were testing his will, his refusal to give in. He shouted back at the shadows, "I am not the strongest, but I will not stop. I will not kneel." The words rang through the chamber and the shadows froze. One by one they shattered into sparks of light. The trial was past. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The ground beneath him glowed brighter, showing the way forward. He rose again, his body weak but his spirit burning stronger. Somewhere deep in his heart he felt the swords whisper again, "You are closer now, but the path is long. Do not falter." Back in the city, the aliens waited with growing unease. The priest hissed to Zorthak, "If the human survives, the prophecy may be true. The sword was never meant for us, it was meant for them." Zorthak's face twisted with hatred. "If he survives, then he will not live long enough to claim it," he growled. And so the stage was set. A human alone in trials older than empires, an alien warlord plotting his death, and a sword that waited silently, glowing in the dark stone above. Daniel stood alone in the chamber of stars, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The shattered shadows had vanished, but their words still echoed in his mind. "You are weak. You are nothing," they had said. But he had refused to bow, and that refusal had kept him alive. The glowing path stretched further into the endless void. Each step he took felt heavier, as if gravity itself was testing him. The air turned colder, sharp against his skin. Ahead, the light began to form another shape. This time it was shy as not shadow, but a vast door of living flame. Beyond the door came a low growl, deep and ancient. Daniel's hands shook, but he pressed forward. He knew this was only the beginning of the sword's judgment. With a roar, the fire split open, and a beast emerged. It was taller than any alien he had ever seen. Its body was made of molten rock and burning veins of lava. Its eyes glowed like suns, and each breath released sparks into the air. In its claws was a chain, and at the end of that chain was another figure. Daniel froze when he saw it. The figure was human, or at least it looked like one. It was a man bound in chains, his face hidden in shadows. The beast slammed the chain into the ground, and the man groaned in pain. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to rush forward to free the prisoner, but a voice whispered in his ear, calm and sharp, "This is not what it seems, do not be fooled." The beast lowered its head, its voice echoing like thunder. "If you want the sword human, you must kill this prisoner. Only then will you prove your strength." The prisoner lifted his head, his eyes shining with sorrow. Daniel gasped, for the man's face was his own. It was like looking into a mirror twisted by pain. The beast laughed, the sound shaking the chamber. "This is your weakness, your humanity. Cut it away and you will be strong. Spare it and you will fail like all the others." Daniel's legs trembled, sweat running down his face. The choice burned inside him. The crowd of aliens above could not see this trial, but the sword would know. He stepped closer, staring at the chained reflection of himself. The man whispered, "Do not kill me. If you kill me, you kill your heart." Daniel closed his eyes. He remembered the vision from before, the endless wars and fallen empires. He remembered the whisper of the sword. It was not strength of arms it desired, but strength of soul. He turned toward the beast and shouted, "I will not kill him. I will not cut away my humanity. If that means I fail, then I fail as a man, not as a monster." The beast roared in fury, its body flaring like a volcano. It raised its claw to strike, fire spilling in every direction. Daniel braced for death, but the sword's voice rang out like thunder. "You have chosen well." In an instant, the chains shattered, and the reflection vanished in light. The beast howled as cracks spread across its body. With a final scream, it exploded into sparks, leaving only silence behind. Daniel fell to his knees, tears burning his eyes, but instead of weakness, he felt lighter, stronger, clearer. The chamber shifted again, and a staircase of starlight appeared before him. Each step pulsed with the sword's glow, guiding him higher. His trial was far from over, but he had passed another test. Meanwhile, above, the alien crowd waited in silence. They had expected screams, failure, or death, but deep under the earth, the pedestal of the sword began to hum. The glow spread across the black stone, cracks of silver light racing outward. Aliens gasped, priests fell to their knees. Zortak's rage grew deeper. His fists clenched so hard his claws bled. "The sword cannot choose him. It will not. I will not allow it," he roared. In the shadows of the city, secret groups of aliens whispered among themselves. Some spoke of prophecy, of ancient texts that said the blade would awaken for a stranger. Others plotted quietly, knowing that if the humans survived, the age of alien rule would end. For the first time in centuries, fear spread through the proud alien race. Not fear of the sword itself, but fear of the human who might wield it. Deep below, Daniel climbed the stairs of starlight, his body weak but his spirit burning. The whisper of the sword followed him with every step. "You have chosen mercy over power, courage over fear, but greater trials await, and your enemies above are already moving against you." And so he rose higher, unaware that Zortak was preparing his own test. One not from the sword, but from hatred. A trap that would decide whether the human lived long enough to ever reach the blade again. The staircase of starlight carried Daniel higher and higher. Each step echoed with whispers of voices he did not understand. They spoke in alien tongues, in human voices, in cries of victory and sorrow. It was as if the memories of the galaxy were trapped in the walls. Daniel felt dizzy, but the sword's whisper kept him steady. "You are close. Do not falter now," it murmured. At the top of the staircase, a vast chamber opened before him. The floor was carved from glass-like stone that reflected endless skies. In the center rose a mirror taller than any mountain, glowing faintly blue. Daniel stared into it, and once again he saw himself. But this time the reflection was different. It was not chained, not weak. It wore black armor, eyes cold, holding the sword as if it already belonged to him. The reflection smirked and spoke. I am you, but stronger, ruthless, without hesitation. If the galaxy must bow, I will make it bow. That is the destiny of the sword. Daniel's heart tightened. He knew this was another trial, but the reflection's words chilled him. The alien crowds above could not see this test, but they would one day see its result. The reflection stepped out of the mirror, solid and alive. It raised the sword, the glow brighter and sharper than lightning. If you cannot defeat me, you cannot hold me, the reflection hissed. You will always be the weaker half. Daniel had no weapon, only his bare hands. The reflection attacked with blinding speed. The blade's swing cut the air and left a burning trail of light. Daniel leapt aside, the ground exploding where the strike landed. The chamber shook, shards of glowing stone flying in every direction. The reflection laughed. You show mercy, you hesitate. That is why you will never rule, never command, never win. Daniel's breath grew short, but his eyes hardened. He realized the trial was not about fighting the reflection with steel. It was about rejecting what the reflection represented, the hunger for power, the thirst to dominate. The sword did not want a tyrant. It wanted someone who would carry its burden without becoming a monster. Daniel shouted, You are not me. You are what I refuse to be. He ran straight at the reflection, even as the sword swung down. The blade slashed across his arm, pain burning through him, but he did not stop. He tackled the reflection with all his strength. The two crashed against the glowing mirror. The reflection snarled and tried to stab him. Daniel gripped the blade with bleeding hands and forced it aside. I will not be you, he roared. Light exploded between them, shattering the mirror into 1,000 shards. The reflection screamed as its body dissolved into mist, and then it was gone. Daniel collapsed to his knees, blood dripping from his arm, but the chamber pulsed with golden light. The sword's voice filled the air. You have faced yourself and refused the path of corruption. You carry not power, but responsibility. Daniel breathed hard, tears in his eyes. He whispered, I don't want to rule. I only want to do what is right. The sword answered, That is why you are chosen. Meanwhile above, the city was boiling with chaos. The pedestal of the sword continued to glow, spreading fear among the aliens. Priests muttered prophecies aloud, while commoners whispered that the age of alien rule was ending. Zorthak saw the fear in their eyes, and his rage grew. He gathered his war council in secret chambers. The human is not passing these trials by chance, he growled. The sword is guiding him. If he reaches the end, it will belong to him, and we will lose everything. One of his generals asked, What do you command, my lord? Zorthak's eyes glared like fire. We prepare the ambush. If the sword chooses him, he will not leave this city alive. At the same time, Daniel's crew sat locked in alien quarters. They could see the glow rising from the pedestal through the narrow window. Fear and hope mixed in their hearts, one whispered. If Daniel survives, the aliens will kill him. We must find a way to escape, to help him. They began planning in whispers, knowing that their friend was fighting alone in trials none of them could see. Back in the chamber, the shards of the mirror floated upward like stars. They formed a path, a glowing bridge leading further into darkness. Daniel stood, clutching his wounded arm. His body was weak, but his spirit was burning brighter than ever. The sword whispered once more. The last trial awaits, and above your enemies gather. If you falter now, the galaxy will never know the truth. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge of stars. Behind him, the chamber vanished. Ahead lay the final trial that would decide his fate. And somewhere above, Zorthak sharpened his blade, waiting for the moment to strike. Daniel walked across the bridge of stars, each step glowing under his feet. The air was colder now, filled with whispers of voices he could not see. Some praised him, some cursed him, but all carried the weight of ages. At the end of the bridge, a final chamber opened, vast and empty. In its center was a single pedestal, and above it floated a silver flame. The flame pulsed like a living heart, glowing brighter as he approached. The sword's whisper filled the chamber, stronger than ever. You have faced fear, you have faced power, you have faced yourself. Now comes the moment of truth. Will you claim me? or will you fall? Daniel's heart pounded, his wounded arm still ached, but he stepped closer. He reached toward the flame, and as his fingers touched it, light exploded. The flame vanished, and in its place appeared the blade of eternity, not trapped in stone, not chained to earth, but floating free, waiting. Back in the alien city above, the pedestal cracked apart with thunder. The sword that had been stuck for thousands of years was gone. The aliens screamed in panic, their world shaking under the loss. Priests cried out that the prophecy was fulfilled. Others fell to their knees, covering their eyes from the light. But Zorthak did not bow. His rage burned hotter than fire. "The sword belongs to us, not to a weak outsider," he roared. He raised his spear and shouted, "Prepare the ambush. When the human emerges, we strike as one." Inside the chamber, Daniel placed his hand on the hilt. The sword glowed brighter, wrapping his body in streams of silver light. Visions filled his mind once more, clearer than ever. He saw armies of alien warlords kneeling before the blade. He saw fleets burning in space, and a lone human standing victorious. But he also saw something else: ruin, death, and galaxies drowning in darkness if the sword fell into the wrong hands. The sword was not only a weapon, it was a choice that would decide the fate of countless worlds. The blade lowered into his grip, heavy yet perfect. The weight was not just steel, but destiny itself. Daniel's knees almost buckled, but he held firm. As his fingers closed around the hilt, the sword pulsed with light. The chamber shook, and a deep voice thundered, "Wielder of humanity, the galaxy has ignored your kind, but I have waited for you, and now you rise." The ground cracked open, and the bridge of stars collapsed behind him. The chamber dissolved into light, and Daniel found himself standing once again in the alien city square. But everything was different. The sword was in his hand, glowing like a star. The aliens gasped in horror, their eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in their history, the blade had chosen, and it had chosen a human. Daniel raised the sword slowly, its glow casting long shadows across the city. Some aliens fell to their knees in awe, whispering, "Chosen one." But others growled, their eyes filled with hatred. And Zorthak stepped forward, his voice echoing like thunder. "Kill him," he commanded. "Now!" Hundreds of alien soldiers charged at once, their weapons raised. Daniel's crew screamed from the cages where they were trapped. "Run, Daniel, run!" they shouted. But Daniel did not run. He tightened his grip on the sword, and in that moment the blade roared to life. Silver light erupted in a wave, slamming into the first line of soldiers, their weapons shattered, their bodies thrown aside like leaves in a storm. The crowd screamed as the ground split open under the force. Zorthak's eyes widened for only a moment before narrowing again. "So the sword has chosen you," he growled. "Then you will die holding it." He leapt forward, his black spear glowing with crimson fire. The clash shook the city as sword met spear, sparks flying across the night. Daniel's arms trembled under the force, but the sword guided his hand. Every strike carried more than human strength, more than alien speed. It carried the weight of destiny. The soldiers formed a circle, watching in silence. The human and the warlord fought with fury, each strike louder than thunder. But Daniel's heart burned with something Zorthak lacked. Not hatred, not rage, but resolve. He fought not for power, but to protect. The sword pulsed brighter with each strike, feeding on his spirit, and slowly, the balance began to shift. Zorthak snarled, sweat burning on his face. "You are nothing without that blade," he spat. Daniel's eyes locked on him, steady and calm. "No," he said, his voice strong. "I am nothing without my humanity. The blade only sees that." With one final strike, Daniel pushed Zorthak back, the clash sending shockwaves through the city. The warlord stumbled, his spear cracked, his pride shattered. The aliens gasped, many dropping their weapons in disbelief. The human had not only lifted the sword, he had defeated their mightiest warlord. The prophecy was alive before their eyes, and for the first time in history, the galaxy trembled at the rise of a human. The city square shook with the clash of sword and spear. Smoke curled in the air, the ground was broken by their strikes. The aliens who once laughed at the human now stood in silence. They had seen their strongest warlord stumble, and that truth burned their pride. Daniel's breath came heavy, his hands sore from the weight of destiny. The blade of eternity pulsed in his grip, silver light wrapping around him like armor. Each heartbeat felt connected to the weapon, as if they were one being. But he knew the fight was not over. Not yet. Zorthak rose again, his armor cracked, his spear glowing with dying fire. His voice was bitter, filled with fury. You think the sword has chosen you, but you are a mistake. I will tear you apart and prove it to all. He charged again, faster and more savage than before. Their clash rang like thunder, shaking the towers of the alien city. Daniel blocked, dodged, and struck back. Every strike of the sword sent waves of energy, throwing soldiers aside. But Zorthak was relentless, his fury endless. The ground split beneath their feet, stone shattered, and sparks rained like fire. Daniel's strength began to waver, sweat stung his eyes, but the sword's whisper filled his ears, calm and steady. Do not fight with anger, fight with truth. It is not strength that holds me, but the heart. Daniel steadied his breath, his movements slowing but sharper. Each strike became precise, every block unshakable. The crowd gasped as the tide of battle shifted once more. The human who had been mocked as fragile was now forcing back their warlord. Zorthak roared in rage and leapt high, spear raised for a killing blow. Daniel lifted the sword with both hands, his arms trembling. When the weapons met, a shockwave burst through the city. The spear shattered into fragments, and Zorthak crashed to the ground, broken and defeated. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some cheering, others screaming, but in the heart of the city, the sword's glow rose higher, brighter than ever before. The sky itself seemed to answer. Storms of silver light swirled above the towers. Bolts of energy rained down, carving symbols into the earth. Priests cried out, "The prophecy is complete. The sword has awakened." Aliens who once stood proud now knelt, their eyes wide with fear. They had lived their whole lives believing the sword belonged to them, but now they saw it burning in the hands of a human. Daniel stood over Zorthak, his chest rising and falling. The warlord spat blood, his pride more broken than his body. "You are nothing without that weapon," he hissed weakly. Daniel lowered the sword, its light still glowing. "I am nothing without my humanity," he answered. "The sword only reminds me of that." But even as Zorthak lay defeated, other voices rose from the crowd. Not all aliens bowed in respect. Some shouted, "Kill the human! Take the sword, it belongs to us!" Hundreds of soldiers surged forward again, their eyes filled with desperation. The city square turned into a storm of war. Daniel's crew broke free from their cages in the chaos. They ran to him, shouting his name, but the sword's voice warned him. "Your trial is not finished. Their blades are not the true danger. The galaxy watches, and one more test remains." From the shadows of the temple, cloaked figures emerged, priests of the old order, keepers of forbidden knowledge. They carried staffs of black crystal glowing with dark energy. One of them pointed at Daniel, his voice like a hiss of fire. "The human is not chosen, he is cursed. The sword belongs to no race, and we will take it back." They struck together, unleashing waves of dark light. The soldiers and crowd scattered as explosions rocked the city. Daniel raised the sword to shield his crew. Silver light clashed against T-black, filling the sky with storms of energy. The ground shook, towers cracked, and the city itself seemed ready to fall. Daniel's voice rose above the chaos. "I did not seek this sword, but it called to me. If you think I am cursed, then strike. But know this, whether I live or fall, the sword has already chosen." The silver light burst from the blade, pushing back the priests. They screamed as their crystals shattered, their dark energy torn apart. The aliens stared in shock, their world crumbling, the warlord broken, the priests defeated, and the sword burning in the hands of a human. Daniel stood in the center of the storm, the sword glowing like a star. His body was tired, his spirit heavy, but his heart unshaken. And as silence fell, the sword whispered one last time. "One trial remains, not of blade or fire, but of choice. The galaxy will bow, but will you lead it with mercy or rule it with fear?" The story of worthiness was not yet finished, but the galaxy had already changed forever. The city square lay in ruins, smoke rising into the alien night. The cries of fear and awe echoed through every street. The mighty warlord had fallen. The priests of darkness were broken, and in the center stood a single human holding the blade of eternity. The sword glowed brighter than the suns above, its light reaching the stars. Every alien eye stared at Daniel, some trembling, some kneeling, some burning with hate. The prophecy had come alive before them, and it had not chosen their kind, it had chosen a human. Daniel's body shook with exhaustion, his arms sore from battle, but the sword held him steady, its voice calm and steady in his mind. The final trial is here, not of steel, not of blood, but of choice. Decide now, and the galaxy will remember your answer forever. Daniel looked around at the destruction, at the faces of aliens who had mocked him. He saw fear, anger, but also something else, hope. The same beings who had laughed at him now whispered his name like a prayer. He thought of his crew staring at him with widden, the eyes trusting him. And he thought of humanity, scattered across the stars, often underestimated, always doubted. What he chose now would decide how the galaxy saw them. Suddenly, the ground split open with a deafening roar. From the cracks rose a figure of pure light, tall and ancient. It was no alien, no human, but a guardian born of the sword itself. Its voice shook the earth. I am the keeper of eternity. The blade is not just a weapon, it is a key that can unite the stars or burn them to ash. The one who holds it decides the fate of all. The aliens gasped, falling to their knees. Even Zorthak, broken and beaten, lowered his head in fear. The keeper's gaze fell on Daniel. You have passed every trial, human, but now you must choose, rule through fear or lead through mercy. The sword pulsed in Daniel's hand, visions flashing through his mind. He saw himself as a conqueror, galaxies kneeling, alien empires crushed under his command. He saw power beyond imagination, his name carved into eternity. But then another vision came, softer, brighter. He saw humans and aliens standing together, building, not destroying. He saw unity born from mercy, not chains. The weight of the choice pressed on his soul like a mountain. Zortak, his voice weak but poisonous, shouted from the ground, "Take the power, human. Rule them all. Show no mercy. Only strength keeps the galaxy in order." Some aliens nodded, desperate for direction. Others shook their heads, praying he would not take the warlord's path. Daniel lifted the sword high, the silver light washing over the city. His voice rang clear, calm, and strong. I did not ask for this. I did not come here to rule. But if this sword chose me, then I choose not fear, but hope, not conquest, but unity. If I must lead, then I will lead with mercy. The light exploded outward, covering the city, the planet, and beyond. Very alien felt its warmth, not burning, but healing. The cracks in the earth sealed, the broken towers lifted, the battlefield became whole again, cleansed by the sword's choice. The keeper of eternity. The blade is not just a weapon. It is a key that can unite the stars or burn them to ash. The one who holds it decides the fate of all. The aliens gasped, falling to their knees. Even Zorthak, broken and beaten, lowered his head in fear. The keeper's gaze fell on Daniel. You have passed every trial, human, but now you must choose, rule through fear or lead through mercy. The sword pulsed in Daniel's hand, visions flashing through his mind. He saw himself as a conqueror, galaxies kneeling, alien empires crushed under his command. He saw power beyond imagination, his name carved into eternity. But then another vision came, softer, brighter. He saw humans and aliens standing together, building, not destroying. He saw unity born from mercy, not chains. The weight of the choice pressed on his soul like a mountain. Zorthak, his voice weak but poisonous, shouted from the ground, "Take the power, human. Rule them all. Show no mercy. Only strength keeps the galaxy in order." Some aliens nodded, desperate for direction. Others shook their heads, praying he would not take the warlord's path. Daniel lifted the sword high, the silver light washing over the city. His voice rang clear, calm, and strong. I did not ask for this. I did not come here to rule. But if this sword chose me, then I choose not fear, but hope, not conquest, but unity. If I must lead, then I will lead with mercy. The light exploded outward, covering the city, the planet, and beyond. Every alien felt its warmth, not burning, but healing. The cracks in the earth sealed, the broken towers lifted, the battlefield became whole again, cleansed by the sword's choice. The keeper of eternity bowed its head. Then it is done. The blade will serve you, not as a weapon of tyranny, but as a light in the dark. With those words, the figure of light faded into the stars. The sword rested peacefully in Daniel's hand, its glow softer but eternal. Silence fell. broken only by the sound of thousands kneeling. The aliens bowed not from fear, but from respect. For the first time in their history, they saw a leader not born of their kind. A human who had been mocked as weak now stood as the bearer of destiny. Daniel lowered the blade, his voice quiet but unshaken. I am not your master. I am not your conqueror. I am a guardian, nothing more. Together we will decide the future of this galaxy, not through chains, but through choice. His crew rushed to his side, tears in their eyes. They looked at him not as the man they once knew, but as something greater, the symbol of humanity's rise. The aliens who had hated him now whispered his name with reverence. The warlord closed his eyes in silence, his defeat final. The priest vanished into the shadows, broken and afraid, and the galaxy trembled with the weight of what had begun. For the first time, the sword had spoken, and it had spoken for humanity.